I was caught by the police, and my father was one of the policemen who caught me. My mom left us when I was 5, and I've only seen her several times since then. I'm 16 now, and this whole time I've lived with my dad. He was and still is a policeman, and a very good one at that. I was very proud to say that my dad was a police officer when I was a kid, but I realized that it wasn't as cool as I thought it would be. He would always come home late and just watch TV. Every time I tried to talk to him, he would barely answer. More often, he would say 2 words like, "Yeah, okay." And that was it. Like, if I would ask him to help me out a little bit with my homework, he would say, "Figure it out yourself. I'm tired." By the age of 15, I kind of stopped talking to him because there was no point in it. He wasn't interested in anything that was happening in my life. But it definitely had its advantages. I could basically do whatever I wanted because he was never home. I could invite my friends over or go hang out with them at any time. Recently, my friend Jason got his driver's license, and his parents bought him a used car. We live in a smallish town, so it was awesome to have a car. Now we didn't have to walk everywhere. If we wanted to get a burger or something, it was just a 5-minute drive instead of a 20 to 30-minute walk. All 4 of us could hang out in his car as much as we wanted, listening to music and hiding from the cold of winter. We loved this car. I also started learning to drive a little bit, usually on the outskirts of town. We got so used to the fact that we never got in any trouble that we started to overdo it a little bit. We would open our windows and speed around really fast, putting our heads out the windows and even putting our tongues out like dogs. We had this long main road in our town that went straight through and outside of it. It was incredibly straight and smooth, and there were barely any cars driving around our town at night. You see where I'm going with this, right? Once, Jason drove through it at full speed, and it was awesome, especially with the right music on. We were shouting and cheering all the way through the drive, and I begged Jason to let me do it myself one night. Finally, after weeks of begging, he finally said yes, although he really didn't want to let me do it. We drove outside of the city, and I took the wheel. My heart was pumping. I started the car. Soon, we were driving at full speed, with the windows open, feeling the wind, and shouting as usual. Even Jason got chill after a while and began to just enjoy the ride. But then, in an opposite lane, there was a police car. We flew past it, but then we heard the sound of a police siren and saw police lights behind us. I panicked and started to slow down. Jason got very nervous, saying, "What are you doing? Don't slow down." "What do you mean, don't slow down?" I asked. Jason continued, "If my parents find out about this, they will take away my car, and I don't know what else. Just drive." I couldn't believe it. I tried to say that this was incredibly illogical and that we would probably get into even more trouble, especially if it was my dad. But Jason and the other guys continued to shout, "Drive!" So I did. I sped up and turned our car into one of the smaller streets, and then I slowed down again because there were a lot of cars parked. Jason got nervous again and said, "Dude, get out of the driver's seat. Let me drive." I did what he asked. We got out of the car in order to change seats. All of us were scared, and we kind of knew that we were doing something really stupid, but we had no choice but to commit to it. As I'm sure you've already figured out, our daring escape didn't really work out in the end. A police car stopped behind us, and 2 policemen got out of it. Of course, one of them was my dad. He looked at me, and I looked at him. I saw anger in his eyes, although he tried to remain calm. For some time, we just looked like that at each other, nobody saying anything. I started, "Dad, I can explain. We were told to wait in the car, but our windows were open, so we heard what they were saying." The other officer said, "Come on, they're just kids. Let's just give them a warning so they won't do it again." But my dad said, "They have to learn responsibility." So all my friends' parents were called. Jason's parents took away his car, but otherwise we were basically given a speeding ticket, and we were sentenced to several hours each of community service, where we had to clean up our park and stuff like that. I apologized to Jason, and we were able to laugh about it later. The fact that we tried to drive away was mostly ignored because it was our first offense. But it got very awkward with my dad. He wouldn't let me go anywhere and was watching me more closely than usual. So from 100% stern to 150%. I was angry at him and even stopped saying hello to him. It was worse than it was before. One evening when he was off work, he came to my room and said, "Get dressed, let's go." I asked why, but he didn't answer. I was very scared of what he was going to do next. I couldn't even argue or try to argue because his face was very serious. I got dressed and sat in his car. We drove in silence. Needless to say, this made me even more nervous. Suddenly, we stopped outside a burger joint. We went inside and he asked me what I wanted to eat. I was surprised. We ordered burgers and started to eat. After a very long and awkward silence, my dad said, "Don't do that again." I nodded. Then, after another long silence, he asked, "How are you?" I looked at him and said, "Fine." Then, after another long silence, I started talking again. I told him all about community service and how much trouble my friends got into. Then talked about school and everything that was on my mind. He would sometimes ask something, but mainly he just listened. Afterward, I asked him, "And how are you?" He smiled for a second and then told several funny stories from his work. We drove home. It was silent again. He said, "Let's do this again sometime." I agreed. And, I guess that's the end of the story. After a while, he let me go out more again, but I wasn't completely free, like before. And we're talking now. He tells me stuff, I tell stuff to him. In a weird way, our reckless driving made me and my dad closer. But yeah, I won't do that again.